Okay. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming to today's webinar. We are going to be talking about props and online teaching. So specifically the props to use in online teaching, as this is part of our online teaching tips series, and that's what we will be talking about today. So let's have a look at what we are going to be discussing in this webinar. So we're going to be looking at props and realia in teaching and what they are. Why are props and realia important when we are teaching online and when we have to use them in our lessons? What makes a good prop, the characteristics of a good prop, what props should not be, and when we should not use props. And then, of course, examples of props that you could use in your lessons. And of course, at the end, we have a Q&A again. So we're going to start off with this quote, which I think is really, really nice. And it's, adding fun to learning creates the best educational experience possible. Now, this is so true. When we add a little bit of fun or some fun props or realia into our lessons, it just makes our lessons, come alive, and our students are more engaged. They are more excited to learn and take part and participate during the lesson. So I think that adding a little bit of fun here and there, is so important in delivering a engaging and fun lesson for our students. So firstly, we would like to hear from you. So please feel free to share your ideas by commenting down below or, just in the chat box, wherever you feel you can share your ideas. And it is what is meant by props and realia in teaching. So we would love to hear from you.
So I know that when I think of props and realia, particularly props, I think of things that are easy to hand, so that easy to put to grab next to me when I'm teaching. Things that haven't got to be expensive. Quite a few of them I've made myself. Things like this, and they just add a really fun element. And I also think it's important to remember we can use props with any age. It doesn't have to just be young learners, which I think you can sometimes think, as we'll look into in a minute, things like soft toys. We can also look at ways that we can use props with older learners, even adults, because it's a really great way to help enhance and facilitate learning.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with you. Can make most of those props yourselves. You don't always need to go out and buy them. Although I have bought some props that I thought were really great, I couldn't make them. I'm not so crafty. But for the most part, I've made a lot of my own props and it's worked really well. And it just kind of also gets you more excited to teach that lesson and use them. So we're going to just take a look at props and realia in teaching and what they are. So realia refers to any real objects we use in the classroom to bring the lesson to life. So anything that we have at home, and we use that in our lesson to kind of convey meaning, have our students get a bit more comprehension about what we're talking about. So realia are items from everyday life, such as an umbrella or an apple, which teachers use as teaching aids. And I do this very often, especially when I'm certain my student won't know, a certain level of vocabulary. It's a great way and an easy way to get them to understand what you are talking about or what you are teaching them. And then, of course, in online teaching, realia are often used as props. So that's just bringing them into the lesson, when appropriate and when they make sense to be used. And then, of course, this helps our students understand what is going on in our lesson and what words we are teaching them.
And I think using Realia is really important, particularly with older students, actually, because it doesn't patronize an older student. If you've got like a little cartoon image, that may not be appropriate. Great for a younger person, but even younger ones, by using, for example, your real mobile phone or your bottle of water, something like that, they can then remember that it's real and it's a real life scenario and a situation rather they can then apply later.
Yeah, and it's also a great way to bring their immediate world into the classroom and just kind of, you know, promote that little bit of understanding as to, you know, oh, that's a bottle or that's an apple. I remember those words.
Exactly.
So props refer to tools used to assist teachers to more productively manage their learning environments and activities. So these can be anything. These can be flashcards, it can be stuffed toys, it can be puppets, it can be a ball, you know, that again stands to Realia. It can literally be anything. And then physical objects often used in storytelling, instructions, or demonstrations. So this is normally where we would use props, where we want to give a little bit more context, or our student is not understanding certain words or, you know, sentences. This is where we would bring props in to assist with that understanding. So why, so you can go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So why are props and Realia important? Well, we always want to make our lessons exciting and interesting and fun, particularly for our students. So one of the first things we'll look at is that it helps to increase participation during lessons. I'm sure you found this, Rose. When I've had a particularly shy student, again, I've had much older students who are very reluctant to engage and much younger students who are just shy because they're so little. Using your puppets or your different fun things, it can engage them. And also you can then ask them to find their own things, so they're participating with you and they're instantly learning. Even if they don't think they are, that's what they're doing. Our second point is that it aids in better comprehension and understanding. For example, you could teach a student colours and you could simply tell them the words. But obviously by using flashcards, showing your colours with the words, covering those words, asking that they can remember the colours and things like this, you can check if you've been effective as a teacher and you can check if they really understood it. And again, ask them to find their things of different colours or whatever it is that you're teaching if appropriate. As we said before, it makes the lesson fun and engaging. I always try to imagine what it's like to be the student. Would I be interested? Would I be engaged? What prop, what Realia, what could I use that would interest me? What do I know that my student likes, and go from there. And it assists in developing the fluency in English, because we can use these different props in Realia. Our students become much more familiar with these as real life objects and they can use them. If we then use them to help them apply that in real life sentences, then their fluency will obviously increase. It stimulates cognitive development. So when we learn in a variety of different ways. We can learn by listening, we can learn by doing, but visual learning is highly effective. And to really be able to help our students, we need to be able to touch all of those areas because every student learns differently. So by using visual things, we're really helping that brain to start to develop and learn with the topic that we're doing. And again, it allows the immediate world to be incorporated in lessons. So as Rose was saying earlier, the student finishes the lesson, they go to the supermarket, maybe they've been learning fruit, they see apples and bananas, and because we've used apples and bananas, whether it's something like a plastic prop or a real apple or banana, they will recognize that and remember it.
So now we have a poll, which is what makes a good online prop. Now, I'm sure that many of us don't really think about, you know, that kind of stuff, but it's very important to think about what would make a good prop and what are the characteristics of a good prop. So Our options here are a prop, which can be used in various ways and situations, a prop which engages the learner, a prop which can distract learners and pull their attention away from the lesson material, and then, of course, a prop which can help to improve pronunciation and phonics. So you can choose as many as you'd like, and we will share the answers with you.
Okay, so lots of people are choosing the 3 of them, so that the prop can be used in various ways and situations, that it can engage the learner, and that it can help to improve pronunciation and phonics. But no one has chosen that a prop can be distracting. Well, a good prop.
Definitely. Okay, so let's take a look at the characteristics of a good online prop.
Okay, so when teaching many students and classes throughout the day, what's a great idea to have is have a core set of props and aids, and it can be a huge major time and a lifesaver. So I can't show it to you because it's too big, but right next to me I have a big basket full of soft toys and different things. I also have another set of trays full of my flashcards, my different things like fruit, my different toys, and behind me, such as you can see with Rose, an interactive classroom, things I can point to and use. Whenever I start my lesson, I'm sure Rose is exactly the same, and I know what my students are going to be teaching. I put everything, I'm very OCD, I put everything in a particular place and it's ready to hand. And it's huge because often you can use props that you didn't know you were going to have to use. So because maybe the student hasn't grasped the concept. So by having plenty available, you can have it there. And I don't know about you, Rose, but ever since I've become an online teacher, I see potential props every time I go shopping. And things that I can use to fill my basket up. Sometimes by the end of my lesson, it's all over my floor. But my students have been engaged, and it's been a huge lifesaver for me.
Definitely. I'm exactly the same. I like to kind of go through the lesson material, and if you know your student, and I know this can be tricky because you might have a student for the first time. But if you know your student, you'd know their level of English and you'd know where their weak points are. So what I like to do with my regular students is, because I have obviously taught them, many times before, I know what they struggle with, and just like you said, I lay my props out, so that they're easy to grab. I know what I want to use. I know when I'm going to use a certain prop during the lesson material. And it's just it's definitely a time and lifesaver, especially when, your students not grasping what you are trying to teach them. A prop is so useful. And it's also a nice little break, from the lesson. It's kind of refreshes their memory and kind of gets them excited and encourages them to participate again.
Yeah, it really does. They are great, and they make it fun for us as a teacher. They really do. Much more interactive for you as a teacher. They keep you on your toes. So if a prop can be used for the following things, so to develop vocabulary, for example, we talked about colors before, but it could be all sorts of things. To practice spelling, to learn phonics and improve pronunciation. This is something I use lots of props for. To practice describing items, which is great. You can get a prop and ask them to describe it to you. To compare and contrast. To explain a cause and effect. And if it can be used for role play, then it's a meaningful prop. This is what's an important point to remember. You could have a prop that is brilliant and it's great, but it's not relevant to your lesson. So that is when that prop would be distracting. It's different, obviously, if you have a student who you need to kind of distract for a bit to get back in the lesson. But remember, as soon as you can, use the props that are relevant to those lessons. Always think, what is the purpose of this prop? What's it going to aid me to do, and how will it aid my student?
Definitely. So as always, please remember that we have a great TEFL course on sale at iqtefl.com. It is fully accredited by Accreditat, and it's designed for teachers by teachers. You can access this course on any of your devices as it's compatible with all of them. And it's honestly a great course, especially if you want to become an online teacher. Then we also have some CPD courses available, and these are great courses. I would recommend them for all teachers, and they are on sale now too at a great price. So please head over to iqtefl.com and sign up if you are interested in any of these. And then, of course, for more resources, we share resources daily, and it's great content. So please head over to all our social media and as well as our YouTube. So please remember to subscribe if you want to be notified when new videos get dropped and when the next webinar will be. So now we're going to look at 3 things props should not be. So I think this is a great topic because, you know, you feel like everything could be a prop during your lesson, which it probably could, but we need to remember that there's a category for props and there's a time and place to use them. So that's what we're going to be looking at now.
Okay, so props shouldn't be filler activities. Okay, so what do we mean by this? Well, we mean basically when there's a bit of a gap in an activity or in a bit of learning and we're not sure what to do. It's not appropriate to just use a prop. Again, if that prop's not relevant to what we do, just a gap fill. It has no meaning, it has no purpose, and actually it could then have an effect on when we use other props because our student may be confused. So why? Because props, they need to be used to accompany the lesson rather than take time away from it. Another word is maybe to complement. So our props complement, they benefit the lesson, they go with it. Our second point about why. Again, they shouldn't be used to just make time go by. For example, maybe you finished a lesson a bit quicker than you had intended. Well, that's where preparation is key to thinking, okay, how can I extend on a lesson? That's not the time where you can just have fun with some toys. It's just making time go by. That's not effective use of them. And they shouldn't be used in the place of other meaningful activities. For example, if you go back to your colours, your flashcards, well, if your student has learnt them, don't keep using them when you could be doing something else. You could be asking them to learn to spell them or find different things on the activity, all sorts of things. Don't keep using the same props when the goal of the purpose of them has already been reached.
Definitely. So now we're going to be taking a look at props shouldn't be a replacement for your teaching. So let's have a look at why this is. So props shouldn't be used as, props should be used as a supplement to your teaching. So it should never be your core teaching. It should always be used in a way to just help your teaching along, to help your student understand what is, being learned. They are able to apply it. And I would say to add a little bit of fun and a visual element into your lesson when necessary. So props shouldn't be used to aid, I keep reading shouldn't. Props should be used to aid in overall understanding. So like I just mentioned, it should be used appropriately to just enhance that, overall comprehension of what is being taught. Props should be used to engage and encourage participation throughout the lesson. I think that we've all experienced the power a prop holds, during a lesson, especially when our students have had a long day of school and they're having online lessons. It's great to incorporate props to keep them going, to keep them motivated, especially the younger students. I think the older students, they have more learning experience. They've kind of dealt with the pressures of education and the longer hours of education. But our younger students, their attention is very short, their attention span and their focus is also not the greatest, at 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night, depending on where your student comes from. So
And
I think, yeah.
I was just going to add to that as well. Some maybe the country where your student comes from, they may be used to quite a strict education system where there isn't an awful lot of fun. I'm not saying that's wrong or right, but that might be what they're used to. So when they come to an online lesson, which they've chosen to come to, or their parents have chosen to them, can you imagine how you'd feel if it was really fun? Then you'd want to come to that lesson.
Definitely. And props should be used to add value to the lesson and material. So it should never take away from it. It should just be there to enhance what is, in your classroom already, or what you're trying to teach your student. So it should never take away from the lesson material or the actual lesson you are presenting.
So number 3, props shouldn't just be used for the sake of using them. So let's have a look at this a little bit more. Why don't we just use them because we can? Because as we've said, they need to be used when it's appropriate, when it's relevant. There's no point using a soft toy or something like this if it's got nothing to do with the lesson that you're teaching. What's another reason why this is important? They should be used to encourage a deeper understanding. We're going to look at some examples in a minute, but things like flashcards can be really great for older students to help them with grammar and things like this, and to check for their understanding. And props should be used when it adds value to what's being taught. So as we said before you use a prop, think why, how, purpose, and that will help us to know if it's a prop that's appropriate. So, can you think of examples of online teaching props? We have mentioned a few, but there is a whole huge variety, probably some that I myself and Rose may not know. So if you have any ideas, please share.
Definitely. So, well, some of my props that I've stolen ideas from other teachers, which is a great way to learn new ways of doing things. And I love my dry erase board. So this is actually from a lesson today. I wrote them. But it's such a great tool, and it's really inexpensive, and it's so versatile. This one is magnetic. So if I want to, kind of paste something or put something up on the board, I can do that. And, it's not too big where it gets in the way. I've also got tons and tons of flashcards. I've made these little instruction flashcards, and, just to kind of, instead of just saying, oh, can you repeat this? I have a little flashcard. So that then reduces my teacher talk time. So it can be so many different things. And I think there are some great examples out there. So please, please, please share. And, we'd love to see your props that you use on a day-to-day basis as well.
I love using my flashcards for structure. I absolutely, again, like you, I have a whole pile, and you can show sometimes if a student is reading is forgotten the article the or a, I can literally with the students, you can just show it. You haven't got to say anything. That's the beauty of props. It reduces your teacher talk time, and they can see that, and they just say the sentence again, and it's great. It's a really effective way.
Okay, so now we've moved on to examples of props to use in the online classroom. So firstly, we have hand and finger puppets. Now, these are great to use with younger students. So hand and finger puppets are an excellent prop for ESL classroom instructions because it engages your students. It makes them excited. You can use it in so many different ways. So let's take a look at how they can be used in your lesson. So we can use them to captivate students through conversation. So if you're doing a conversational icebreaker, this would be a great time to use the props. You're using it from, the beginning of the lesson, which already engages your students, and maybe for a shy student, they'd feel a lot more at ease. You know, they might grab their little teddy bear and start talking back to you. So it's a great way to kind of spark that conversation between your students. It encourages participation through role play. And I have witnessed this. I've had an extremely shy student that didn't want to really say anything during the lesson. And as soon as I brought out a prop, a teddy bear, and did some role play, he was ecstatic. He got his prop or his toy, and, you know, we had a conversation. And that's amazing. As long as they're engaging and they're talking and they're trying, that's all we can ask for.
And it's a great feeling, isn't it, when that happens? You
Definitely.
think all it took was a little poppet. It's brilliant.
They are great for storytelling. So it just brings the story to life. You know, it just makes it more engaging for our students, especially, of course, like our younger students, because they may not understand. So it gives them something to focus on as well. And then, of course, it transforms into make-believe characters your students will connect with. So I've had a student that kept asking for my teddy bear. I gave it a name, and, I want to see, you know, Ben or whatever. I can't even remember what I named him. And every lesson she would ask to see him. So it's just created that sense of, you know, student retention for one, but also excited to come to the lesson and learn.
Definitely. So number 2, flashcards, as we've spoken about. So let's have a look at some examples. So flashcards, they're great because you can use them in lots of different contexts to enhance the learning experience. Let's look at some 4. So flashcards can be used for the following. You can use them to enhance activities and games. So something I often I'm just trying to think. Yes, a lesson I was doing recently, we were doing jungle animals, which is quite unusual. You don't tend to have those next to you often. So something like a lizard. This is great. So you can say, can you find the lizard? So this helps them to know what it is they're looking for. I know this is an iguana, by the way, or a chameleon. I think it's a chameleon, but it's the same sort of thing. But they know what they're looking for. So again, it helps them. They see that and they can think, oh, where's that in the picture? But you can also use them for older students for different things. For drilling vocabulary, this is great. I love my number flashcards. So I have 0 to 10, and that's great. 1, 2, 3, and then you can do it out of order and things like that. Making it visual is really, really important. It helps with practicing pronunciations. So this is something I often use with phonics. I have a whole set of phonics cards. So for each phoneme that we're learning, or for each diagraph that we're learning, use the flashcard, sound it out again and again. And it's like visual plus the auditory plus the doing. So it's all 3 aspects of learning. And they can facilitate conversation and role plays.
Yeah, definitely. So I like to use these kinds of flashcards because I find that most students struggle with, you know, my, your, ours, us. So I like to have those, and it's like instant, you know, they remember instantly. Instead of you saying that, it gives them something to, you know, remember visually. So it's flashcards are.
Yeah, it's nice to remember that you can. So I use like these for my prepositions.
Yes.
So you can have an image as well as the words. And I find this really handy with an older student. I will cover the words and say, where's the ball? And if they're not sure, then I'll show them the words and things like that. And it's great. It really helps them to remember.
So now we have some dry erase boards. And these are great. These are great for younger students and for older students. I like to use them for when my students are making sentences.
Yeah.
I also like to use it for when they struggle to make sentences as sentence starters. So this is, and then they finish the sentence. So let's have a look at why dry erase boards are great. So smaller dry erase boards are compact enough to hold in your hands, making them useful teaching aids. So I wouldn't get a huge one, because that just wouldn't be practical, but you know, small enough, and they're great for demonstrating grammar. So that's exactly what I did in my lesson today. was we were learning words with GR and DR. So I used it to write some vocabulary on there that I knew my student wouldn't remember. You know, they were just a little bit too tricky for her. For practicing vocabulary. So it's a great tool to have to show the spelling of a word and, you know, the pronunciation of a word. For assessments, you can keep score. It's a fun way to do assessments. I love doing that. So when your student gets an answer right, or, you know, a bunch of answers, you can give them a little score on the board. It's just more interactive that way. And then, of course, for pinning up information. So it's great if you have a picture you want to show them, instead of just holding it up, you can make it fun and pin it up on the board and that kind of thing.
I also find having a variety of different colored pens is really handy, particularly if you're teaching a mistake, so you can put it in one color, or grammar. For example, if you're using present continuous, adding ing, I'll quite often put that in a different color compared to the verb, something like that, because again, I learn by colors, and lots of people, it's just another way to remember. So number 4, this is my favorite one, as you can see. So stuffed animals. So these work obviously very well with our younger students. So they are a favorite with our young ESL learners, and they can be used for the following. They can be a huge variety again, but they can be used as part of your background. And I love this because often if I have a new student, I see them see my background, and like I've seen lots of other teachers' wonderful backgrounds, Rose's colourful background, and they're immediately, what's that? And it's interactive, so I can literally reach up. I quite often reach for my big fat cow. They love my big fat cow and things like this. And it's not just a stationery, it's got a purpose. We can use as a prop to aid understanding. We can use them during role play. Often I'll get 2 toys and get them to talk to each other, and then get the student to say, what does he say? What does he say? We'll get them to use their own. And the same for engaging in conversation, particularly with a shy one, get something they fun. What's really handy is maybe asking them, what's your favorite animal? And then maybe you've got a prop that's like that, and you could use that, because that's great in engaging conversation. And this is lovely. It adds an element of comfort. We all love stuffed toys, let's admit it, even if we're not young anymore. And it is, as a child, that's something lovely. And if they have their own, that gives them that sense of their comfort, and they're safe. They're great. I love them.
So now we're moving on to everyday items. So this is what we meant by Realia, as we spoke about earlier. So this is great because everybody has everyday items in their house. Yes. So it's great. You can use it, you know, whenever. So whatever you find around your house, again, does it apply to your lesson first? Then it's a great prop. So let's have a look at what we can use it for. So to model verbs. Now I do this often, you know, when I want to show a certain verb they might not understand. You can use TBR as well, but it's great to have real life items there. And they oftentimes you'd find they would say something like, oh, I have that too. So it's great for that. It facilitates instruction. So it helps them understand what you are asking them to do by using these real life items in your lessons. It facilitates understanding and comprehension. You know, if they are unsure of this certain vocabulary used, you can show them what you are talking about. You know, it's good and well saying apple, and then your student doesn't know what an apple is, but as soon as you show them, they know immediately. And then it adds relevance to the material, as any prop would. When used appropriately, it just assists in the lesson material and, of course, that overall understanding.
So if anybody has any ideas they'd like to share, please, you can either share in the chat or you can leave it in the comments below. We do read those comments and we love people sharing their ideas. So how have you used props during your online lesson? Something that I find very handy is at the beginning of a lesson, you'll very often ask a student, what did you do today? And I'll have little things around me. For example, did you read a book today? Seeing something like that. Did you draw today? That helps a younger student to understand. And you can also use props for older students so that from the beginning of the lesson, they're engaged with you.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with that.
But there's an endless amount of ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. So if anybody has any questions, that would be great.
So a question that has come up is, what kind of props would you recommend for teachers who are traveling?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because you cannot take a big basket of teddy bears everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think your flashcards are really handy. Maybe a couple of soft toys, or like a puppet. So something that's small enough. You can get quite small ones, can't you, that you could put in a suitcase that isn't heavy and it's easy. If you're struggling, then print off pictures of your animals or your different things, like we've looked at prepositions, all sorts of things. So I'd go for flashcards, and I'd always have a whiteboard with me. And you can get them anywhere. You can get really small ones as well that you could use, but make sure it is big enough to be of a purpose.
Yeah, I think flashcards are great because they're also versatile to use as a makeshift background. So I've definitely done that when I've been traveling, and you just put them up. You know, you've definitely got a wall near you. So they're great for that. And also remember, you can use digital props too.
Yes.
So they don't necessarily need to be all, you know, real life props. If you can't do that, digital props work really well too. So that's just a great thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, someone else has said what sort of things could be a digital prop. That's okay. And thinking about that, maybe if you have an interactive classroom, the tools that you have in your classroom, they're props, which is particularly effective with older students. I find that very effective with correcting grammar structure by writing their sentence with their mistakes, helping them to see it, getting them to draw something, putting boxes around certain parts of the text, underlining arrows. All of that is props, because especially for older students, you don't want soft toys and things like that. I have used them and said, I'm really sorry, this is the only one I've got, and that's fine. But you can rely on the computer as well.
Definitely.
Okay, so as we said, about halfway through, please remember that we have this amazing IQ TEFL course. It is accredited. It is really good. It's much more interesting than the one I did. It's interactive. It's fun. Again, you can use it on your laptop, your tablet, or your phone. It's accessible on all of those devices, and at the minute, it is also at a very good price. And please pop over to iqtefl.com, because we have a huge variety of CPD courses at an extremely good price, a really good price. And I've done some of these courses, and I'm genuinely saying this, they are really good, and they are incredibly helpful for becoming an online teacher, or just a teacher in general. Actually, there's loads of tips. And every week we have our IQ TEFL webinars with different. Next week we'll be doing a grammar series. We'll be doing prepositions next week, which will be interesting, looking at how we teach that. A bit of a tricky subject. So remember to click subscribe. We've got YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. And we would love to see your likes and please your comments as well. That would be great. So, and finally, if you visit iqtefl.com, you can also see a variety of different videos on all sorts of different subjects, all to do with online teaching. So thank you so much for coming today. We've loved having you with us. We really hope that these tips are useful for you. And if you think of any more things that we haven't mentioned props wise, let us know, because we'd like to magpie your ideas as well. So thank you. Thanks, Rose. And we'll see you next week.
See you.